Hey everyone, it's Caisha with TGN, bringing you a healer's guide to heroic spine. As everyone is pretty much aware, this is the most difficult boss fight in the instance, despite it not being the end boss of Dragon Soul. Shocking, I know. First thing to be aware of for healers is that most guilds do run with 6 healers in this fight. We ran with 6.5, since I count Smite, DPS, Priest as half healers. You can squeak it out with 5 or 6 normal healers, however, it just depends on your composition and your DPS. I did bring 1 Paladin, 1 Holy, and 1 Disc Priest, 2 Resto Shaman, and 2 Resto Druids. And I brought the 2 Resto Shamans to the fight mainly because mana is so tight, and obviously the 2 mana tides are extremely beneficial for this reason. It helps to call out mana CDs in a set rotation for the raid or healing leader, whichever one you are, especially for the Shadow Priest since they're usually busy DPSing and not thinking about hymns really, if at all. I did have the Shadow Priest hymn first, just to get it out of the way. Once your healers, etc. become more comfortable with the rotation, you won't have to call out each and every single mana cooldown. They'll pretty much know the rhythm and timing more or less. It's just important to stress the fact that you have to use them wisely and on cooldown. You can't let a minute or 2 lapse between mana tide. If it's up, use it, pretty much. In Heroic Spine, you have to deal with dispelling blood, corruption, death. And for this reason, you only need 1 main dispeller. You will probably need a backup, but think of it as a Sinestra. Only 1 person needs to be in control of dispelling. This is mainly so you don't accidentally dispel the good buff, which is Blood Corruption Earth, which decreases the amount of damage you take. I had my Disc Priest dispel, and then when the tendons came up, she DPS'd and I took over for that time period. Also, it helps if the dispeller is gripped, she can call out, or he can call out, hey, you know, take over dispels for a minute. Alright, it's not a constant dispel rotation, it's just you need to have it at certain times. Major coordination is needed at the beginning of the fight due to the nature of dispelling the debuff Blood Corruption Death. When you dispel this, a random person in the raid will get a beneficial debuff called Blood Corruption Earth, which again decreases the damage you take by a certain percent. The reason coordination is required is because you can more or less control who gets the damage reduction buff, i.e. guaranteeing that tanks are getting it before anyone else, so you don't go through half the fight without them having 10, 20, 30% damage reduction. The way you do this is when everyone lands on Deathwing, everyone aside from the tank stack in the back left part of the spine. This is near the tail, and then the tanks stand at the top right corner when the debuff goes out. You will dispel it, and then the tanks should get Blood Corruption Earth before anyone else. At this point, you will do the roll and do the fight as normal. Everything else on this fight is essentially the same for healers. There's a debuff that absorbs healing, and you have to get it off people before they stop dropping dead from it, basically. Cooldown usage, as always, you have to coordinate when you use the cooldowns. We typically use them on the Nuclear Blast since that's the main amount of damage. For that, we on the first one we use Barrier and Spirit Link, and as well as My Trank and Tree Form. Second one gets a Tank CD and a Spirit Link again, because again we're using 2 Shamans on this. And again, a Trank if possible, or a Hymn, whichever one is available. And then you rinse and repeat for each Nuclear Blast when the Amalg blows up. You will also need to use Rallying Cries, etc. later on in the fight when you're doing the turns. It is extremely important in this fight that you do get aid from Ret Paladins for Bop, Sacks, and Lay on Hands, for when people with the debuff get really low and are almost dead and something is about to kill them, i.e. the Amalg blowing up, blood, etc. You do need to use externals from tanks and Rallying Cries from warriors when you flip him, especially later on in the 2nd and 3rd tendon phase. Keep reminding those with the debuff to use Light Wells. It gets kind of annoying, but there's so much going on in the fight that it helps to be reminded every once in a while. Especially towards the end of the fight, healers will need to stack with whatever tank is tanking all the bloods. Not the one kiting, mind you, but the one tanking at the head of spine. Since aggro is such an issue, don't make your tank run around trying to save you when you can just chill with him and give him lots of hugs. At some point between the 2nd and 3rd tendon, one tank will start kiting a lot of bloods. And of course, he will require assistance from Priest. If you have a Holy Priest, you need to use their shield to give him body and soul speed buff. Our tank usually calls when he needs the shield, and I suggest everyone try to do the same. However, obviously, if your tank can't handle it, then you're going to have to judge it yourself if you're the Holy Priest. The tank will also need to call for grips when needed, and thus an order is required for that. Alright. External cooldowns from the healers should be used on the stationary blood tank that you're stacking up on and not the one kiting, but as ever, please use discretion. This fight is very fluid once you get to the 3rd Tinin phase, and you really just have to try to keep everyone from dying. It doesn't matter how, it's just a hold your butt phase and pray for the best. One note on Tinin DPS, it is 100% okay to DPS the Tinins when possible, but try to be wary of your mana, just be aware of it. It's quite a mana intensive fight, so manage your cooldowns well. That's it for Heroic Spine, if only putting it into practice were this simple, right? As always, good luck and have fun. This video is part of the Wave movement, a career path for YouTubers. To find out more, visit tgn.tv.